Hey YouTube, this is Bullion Bill. This is my first stacking video that I posted on YouTube. As you can see right here, it's just a modest stack, but I'm well on my way. I have 21 ounce bars, 6 Silver American Eagles, and a few little fractional pieces and a commemorative round from Franklin Mint. A few of the things I wanted to talk about in this video is I wanted to share my journey and how I started stacking. I see a lot of videos out there, people are sharing their stories, and for me, I'm sure it's the same as it was for everyone, but I'd like to share it anyway. I was just on YouTube one day, just browsing around, and I came across a channel, and it was Still Keeping One, and it piqued my interest. And after watching a lot of these videos and people sharing their stories, it made me step back and just take a look at the way that I see money, and I had a lot of questions that I really never thought about before. Simple things like what is money? What backs money? What's the history behind money? So I'd like to share a lot of that with you, and some things that I found while I was doing some research. And I'm going to sum it up pretty quickly as far as how money came to be. Back in the early days of civilizations, basically everything was on a barter system. So if, for example, I would forge an axe, I would go down the street and a gentleman just forged a sword. I need a sword, he needs an axe. So we barter and we trade. But there were limitations with that. There were problems. Suppose there was a man that had 3 head of cattle that I really wanted. I would forge 2 axes and go to him. If he didn't want the axes, then there was no trade that took place. So that was one of the fundamental problems. So what had to happen was there had to be some type of commodity or good or service or something that everyone would want. And that, of course, is where precious metals come in, gold, silver, platinum, things like that. Everyone has a need for it. It's accepted by everyone. So that worked. That's basically how it got started. Now we can get into the U.S. currency just a little bit. One of the biggest questions that I didn't understand was, what is American money backed with? What is the U.S. dollar backed by? Now we're all aware that the gold standard dropped off. I believe it was in the early 30s, 1930s. And the silver, if I remember correctly, it was during the 60s sometime. It's really strange what backs the U.S. dollar right now. So it's called fiat money, and basically that's a currency that derives its value from laws. Now it's different from commodity money, which is money that's based on precious metals, such as the old gold standard that we used to be on. And those precious metals have you can use them in other mediums of exchange. Now, Federal Treasury notes, which is the U.S. dollar, okay, they're not redeemable in gold, silver, or any other commodity, and they really have no backing by anything. But they're really worth, they have no value in itself. But what it will do is it will allow you to exchange for other goods and services. They're legal tender. What backs this in fiat money is the goods and the service of the entire United States economy. Now, if you look at the dollar bill, there's going to be a Federal Reserve note. This is pretty much any bill in the United States currency. Okay. What is a note? A note, by definition, is a promise to pay a debt. So, what debt am I, who has these dollars? What debt do I have to pay? Last I checked, when I went to work every day and brought home a paycheck, this is a representation of my labor. It's something that I got to keep. But what you're being paid, I'm being paid for my labor, but the dollars that I'm accepting in payment they're really nothing but IOUs that I could use to purchase other goods and services. Now, the dollar bill in the old days used to have a statement on it that says, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable in lawful money at the United States Treasury or any Federal Reserve Bank. Now, if you look at the dollar bill today, it just simply says that this note is legal and tender for all debts, public and private. So, in other words, you can't redeem it for lawful money. A dollar bill is not lawful money. It's legal tender. Legal tender coins or banknotes have to be accepted if it's being offered in payment of a debt. Now, what lawful money is any form of currency issued by the United States Treasury and the Federal Reserve System, including gold and silver coins, Treasury notes, or Treasury bonds. Now, there's a couple things that really got my attention, and I'll share these examples with you right now. Okay, before I get into these examples, I wanted to get back to these old notes so you could see what I was talking about. Up here in the top left, it says, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable in lawful money at the United States Treasury or any Federal Reserve Bank, which means you could trade this in for gold or silver. Also down at the bottom, it says, we'll pay to the bearer on demand, which means if you walked into a Federal Reserve Bank, you could exchange it. Now, versus a current $5 bill, which basically says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and there is nothing to say that you can exchange for gold and silver because you no longer can. Getting back to those dates, the redeemable notes into gold ended in 1933, and the redeemable notes in silver ended in 1968. Okay, this is the example that really got my attention. It made me really think about money and value and purchasing power. What we're looking at here is a 1911 Indian Quarter Eagle. It has 0.12094 ounces of gold, and in 1911 it had a face value of $2.50, which means this coin, the face value, was the value of the precious metal at the time, because we were still on the gold standard. Today, this coin has the same face value of $2.50. Now, obviously, it's worth a lot more because of the metal content. But in 1911, if you took this coin to a gas station and you purchased as much gasoline as you could with this $2.50, and gasoline was 5 cents a gallon, you could get 50 gallons of gasoline. Now, if you take $2.50 to a gas station today, you're not even going to get 1 gallon of gasoline. Now, if you could find a gas station that would accept gold as a form of payment, you could get around 50 gallons of gasoline. So that really struck me, and it got my attention, because if the purchasing power of this coin hasn't changed in 100 years, well, a little over 100 years, then what changed? And obviously, what changed is the value or the purchasing power of the United States dollar. There's a lot of reasons for this. When we went off the gold standard, I think that was one of the biggest mistakes that this country's made. It opened the doors for the government to manipulate its value by just printing more money every day and devaluing the dollar further and farther every day. And also manipulation from the Federal Reserve. It just leaves a lot of room for corruption, and you can see that just by looking at the value and the purchasing power of the dollar today. Okay, often in the videos that I saw on YouTube, people would talk about wealth preservation, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to find out what that meant to me. How is my wealth preserved by purchasing precious metals? And what I came across really surprised me, and I found a few other videos online with similar studies, and I just couldn't believe they were true. So I went and I actually crunched the numbers myself, and they were pretty damn close. So I'm going to share them with you in this little presentation I put together here. The year 2003, if you had $3,000 to invest and you split it up evenly and you purchased $1,000 worth of silver, $1,000 worth of gold, and $1,000 cash that you could use in exchange for goods and services, and you put that in your bank account. Now in 2003, if you took that $1,000, you could purchase 166 ounces of silver. Or if you could take that $1,000 and you could purchase 2 3/4 ounces of gold. And of course you have your $1,000 you put in the bank. Now at present day values, that 166 ounces of silver is worth $3,154. That's an increase of $2,154 in US dollars. And gold, that 2.75 ounces or 2 3/4 ounces of gold is now worth $3,645, and that's an increase of $2,645. Now, in your bank account, with inflation, with the devaluation of the dollar, now that $1,000 only has a purchasing power of $749. You actually lost $251. Now, 5 years later, you had another $3,000 to invest. This is the year 2008. Now all of a sudden that 1,000 US dollars only buys you 66 ounces of gold because of of silver, because of the devaluation of the dollar. And the same with gold. You can only purchase 1.1 ounces of gold versus 2 3/4 for that same $1,000. So in both cases, there's still an increase. Silver is $1,980 and gold is $1,826. Your cash, another $1,000 that just sat in a bank and did nothing with, more devaluation, less purchasing power. Now it's only worth $931. Now if you combine those totals from 2003 to 2008, your total silver accumulation is 232 ounces, and there's a $2,000 initial investment. The US dollar value had increased by it's now worth $5,134. That's an increase of 157% in US dollars. That really shows you the devaluation of the dollar, because I just showed you that the purchasing power for precious metals hasn't changed. It just shows you the devaluation of the dollar and how the purchasing power gets worse and worse and worse over time. Gold, a total of 3.85 ounces. The $2,000 investment's now worth $4,471. That's a 106% increase in US dollar values. And your cash that sat in the bank for all those years that you didn't touch, this is a non-interest bearing account. Obviously, not that that would make much difference. 1 or 2% or 3% is not going to affect this in a dramatic way. It surely isn't keeping up with the devaluation. You lost 16%. Okay, that's a big chunk of change that you lost just from sitting in the bank. Now, this really gets to this is the meat and potatoes of what's going on. Like I talked about at the gas station, the value and purchasing power of these precious metals do not change over time. I can invest, say, $20 an ounce for 1 ounce of silver today, and in 50 years, that 1 ounce silver bar is going to buy me the same goods and services in 50 years as it does today, as long as we're using the precious metal as a form of exchange and not a US dollar. So this is the biggest reason, this is the biggest eye-opener for me, and this really helped me see what wealth preservation really is. And it's why I decided to start stacking. So I wanted to share this with you, and hopefully, I could steer some young person into looking at money and labor and the value and purchasing power of currency in a different way. And hopefully I can grab someone young that I can help understand a little bit better. I wish that I had asked these simple questions years ago. I'd be a lot better off for it. So till my next video, thank you guys for watching, and keep an eye out for my next video. Talk later.